Hello, everybody, and welcome to Madden and Benz. Unfiltered, Tim Benz and Mark Madden with you. Glad that you're with us, courtesy of Bella Construction. With 27 years of experience, specializing in roofing, siding, windows, and doors, their large purchasing power means unbeatable prices and top quality. For a free estimate, call 724-515-5163 or visit mybellaRoof.com. Bella Construction, where quality and affordability meet. And Mark, we actually got some quality from the Steelers passing game last night with Russell Wilson at quarterback as the Steelers beat the Jets at Acrisure Stadium.
Yeah, as I wrote in my trib column that I just sent in, the Steelers have been minus a real quarterback for so long, they forgot what one looked like. So did all of us. Same thing with the legitimate offense. Same thing with the wide receiver making plays. It was just a brave new world for the Steelers last night, and that's all because of Russell Wilson. They did so much that was beyond the scope of Justin Fields. And that's no knock on Justin Fields. He's a backup. But Russell Wilson is QB1. It was what he was brought to Pittsburgh to do last night. He was healthy. He did it, and it looked like a whole different team.
I'll admit it, my hesitation about wanting to see Russell go in and be the starting quarterback instead of Justin Fields, it was much more about, I thought the ceiling was lower on Wilson than it is like anything about me being a Fields sycophant. I'm not. I never saw this as a red state, blue state kind of argument. I thought they were flawed enough that you could be concerned about both, and I didn't know how much positivity you reaped from either. But Wilson, actually, Mark, I thought the best pass that Wilson threw last night was that play where Jalen Warren turned a 3rd and long into a first down where Wilson had to roll out because Broderick Jones got beat on the inside on a pass rush. Wilson looked nimble. He rolled out. He made a difficult pass, and Warren caught the ball and jetted upfield and got a first down. That, to me, was the most impressive thing that Wilson did last night because he did look nimble at times in the pocket.
Well, yeah, the conventional wisdom from the Fields groupies was that Wilson would get killed behind that beat-up Steeler offensive line. And he only got sacked once. He scored a rushing touchdown because he knows how to play quarterback. The play you just described with Warren, Tim, it's because Russell Wilson knows how to play quarterback. Justin Fields simply doesn't. Will he ever learn? I don't know. This ain't about then. It's about now. One thing I got to say, though, about that offensive line, as beat up as it is, you can tell even on the TV feed that Mason McCormick is a mauler. He's getting some stuff done in there.
Yeah, it makes me feel good about the prospect of him taking over for James Daniels next season. Basically, he has that position right now as it is, with Daniels being on IR and Siamalu having the other guard spot. And then you just plug Zach Frazier back in there, hopefully after the bye. But they got by with in one piece with McCollum at center. The biggest thing right now is just getting Broderick Jones right around the offensive line. I'll tell you, I made a big point about this. I was concerned about seeing Russ being thrown in against the second best pass defense in football with a banged up offensive line. The timing felt bad to me, but he did a really good job. And 264 yards versus, I think it's 167 throughout the season. It's obvious. And they're letting him throw the deep ball. They're letting him do quarterback things that they were hesitant to allow Justin Fields to even try.
Well, the single biggest development of bringing Wilson in is Pickens isn't wasted now. He's a star now. He's a game breaker now. He's a game changer. And that was never going to happen with Justin Fields, and Pickens would have gone insane. He would have popped off, would have got, suspended, benched, slapped on the wrist considering they have no other receivers. I don't know. But it was just going to get real bad with George Pickens if he didn't start getting the ball. And bad for the Steelers, too. We're not talking about a selfish thing. We're talking about what's best for the Steelers thing, and that is George Pickens being able to shine. One other thing about the offensive line, too, Tim. That McCollum must have did okay, right? Because we didn't notice, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Center's not that important. It's not that hard to play. We horribly overrate it.
Although when we get a good one, we do love to talk about it. And there's been, mediocrity there.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah. Since Pouncey left. But Zach Frazier's really good. And, I think it's an upgrade to the offensive line the minute that he's back in there. And one thing we do have to point out is, Najee Harris, they did win the ground game decisively, even though Breece Hall was in the backfield for the Jets. He did a good job catching the football. He had the one big catch and run. I thought the tackling was really poor from the defense in the first half. They got their act together much better in the second half, but the tackling was very poor. I mean, even Dante Jackson admitted it to us in the locker room afterwards. He hurt himself on a missed tackle. He says he's going to be okay, he thinks, for the Giants game, but he was diving and missed Breece Hall, got himself out of position, and then had to be lost for the rest of the game. And kudos to Pierre and the other guys who came in, because I actually thought the secondary got better as the game went along, and they figured out how to handle Devontae Adams. 9 targets, 3 catches, was it 30-something yards, maybe 30 yards? For as much hype as there was about him joining up with Aaron Rodgers, there wasn't much productivity as a result.
Well, they figured out how to cover all them targets because the Jets have more depth at receiving than any team they've played or maybe will play. And the secondary took them a little bit of time, but they definitely got that sorted out. And what really helped the Steelers secondary is Aaron Rodgers is washed up. He is all the way gone. He just stinks. He's this old grifter who has his platform on Pat McAfee to stay relevant, but he's not a good quarterback anymore. And I was glad that Russ outplayed him, that the Steelers defense stifled him, that Beanie Bishop picked him off twice. It was just a glorious day for those of us who just have no stomach for Aaron Rodgers and what he brings to the table on and off the football field. I just think he's a scumbag, and it was good to see him get his.
I credit Michael Keaton for ripping Gotham before the start of the game.
Yeah, but you know what I don't credit Acrisure Stadium for? Michael Keaton, who, by the way, is the only Batman that matters. The only Batman that matters. Okay, Michael Keaton does this great unity video. You know how Pittsburgh's so together behind the Steelers, and then they boo Wilson in the first quarter.
That's true. That did happen. In fact, where we were sitting in the press box, you could hear underneath us. I don't know if it was other places in the stadium, but you could hear some Justin Fields chants going on right beneath us.
You know, it was great, too. There was a lot to like about last night's game. First and foremost, that it wasn't your typical deadly, dull Steeler game of the post-Ben era. It wasn't death dipped in NyQuil like so many are. You could stay awake. But I love that they got that last touchdown with under 30 seconds left. That was kind of a proclamation. We're going to keep coming for you. I was over the moon about that. I wish they would have gone for 2, Tim. That would have been even better. I wish they could have gone for 3.
Speaking of the crowd, how about the pop our friend Billy Gardell got when he came out with the giant terrible towel flag? They had the entire 1974 Super Bowl IX team there, Mark, and they decided to go with Billy Gardell coming out of the tunnel. Not Mean Joe, not Lynn Swann or Stallworth. Billy Gardell gets the tap on the shoulder.
And Billy's lost so much weight, I don't think people recognized him right away.
He's thinner than Lynn Swann.
They're like, where's the rest of them?
Yeah, is that really Billy Gardell? Is that a bad impersonator? What's going on here exactly? No, it's good for him. It was a fun night.
No, good for Billy. Billy's the best. Billy is just great Pittsburgh guy. But yeah, it was a terrific night. It was one of the few Steeler games in recent history I was actually enthused while watching. You know, like the way they played with Fields and with Pickett and with Trubisky and even with Rudolph, where they tiptoed around on offense trying not to kill themselves. That wasn't the case last night. It was wonderful to watch.
You know what else was good? The special teams was good. They came in with the 4th best special teams unit in football. The Jets were 28th. That was something that they needed to maximize, and they did. They blocked 2 kicks. I thought the first one should have counted. I think even I heard this secondhand, but I believe McCauley said it was a poor call to call that leveraging during the broadcast. That was a great play by Minkah. That block should have counted. Lowry got the other block. The punter's good. Boswell's great. The special teams have really helped them this year.
I think that penalty got called on Minkah because the referees couldn't believe Minkah made a play. They figured there must have been skullduggery, Tim. But, yeah, the special teams. How about when they mobbed Danny Smith after the block?
Yeah. Yeah, because he was
He's
so
an old
mad.
guy, man. Be careful. Be careful.
That's right.
He's old.
He's coming off a shoulder surgery when he got hurt on the sidelines a couple of years ago. The other thing, Mark, you talked about making plays. Your guy, Beanie Bishop, was one of the guys of the match in this contest.
Oh, he was head honcho numero uno for me, with all due respect to Russ. I thought he was the number one star. He made a great play on the one pick, and then the ball bounced to him off Garrett Wilson on a play where Aaron Rodgers, you could tell, can't wait to go on McAfee and throw Wilson under the bus this week. And by the way, that team is going to rebel against that sooner, not later. Him blaming everybody but himself. Yeah, that is going to not be real popular in the near future, because he's real bad now.
Yeah, he's no good. He's got all his guys, and he got rid of everybody he didn't want anymore.
And he still sucks. But I mean, Pat won't ask him a hard question, so it doesn't matter. That's his platform to speak lies and the truth. And by the way, Tim, did you see the comedian on game day that was telling homophobic jokes on game day?
No, I didn't. I didn't see game day this week.
I forget the guy's name. Apparently he's pretty popular. He was on game day. He told 3 homophobic jokes on game day. ESPN should look in the mirror and say, what the hell have we done to ourselves? Even a guy like Mike Greenberg went from being one of the best TV and radio sports guys ever to this simpering, whimpering caricature of a Jets fan who just embarrasses himself on TV every day. What has ESPN done to itself?
Well, as woke as they are, I'm surprised they were okay with that. Or were they not okay with it?
I don't know. I mean, there's been no fallout that I've heard of. They were like the other guys.
Oh, is it Shane Gillis? Is that you're talking about, Shane Gillis?
No, I forget the guy's name. Some like one of those hundreds of nameless, faceless comedians. He's probably a star. I don't know. But yeah, but the other guys, I saw the clip, the other panelists, because this guy's sitting on the panel. So it's not like you can cut away from him. And they were trying to kind of dump out of it, and he wouldn't let it go.
Okay, I think I found it now. Is it Tony Hinchcliffe from the Kill Tony podcast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's him. Yes.
He's really funny. He was the guy that actually, it was him and Nikki Glazer that were the 2 stars of the roast of Tom Brady. He did a really good job on the roast of Tom Brady.
That's great. The stuff he said here was inappropriate. Like he said, the one guy in this kicking contest looked like Matthew McConaughey.
See, like that's
that's ESPN now. That's what ESPN has become. ESPN has devolved horribly.
Yeah, I mean, I as far as his comedy, I think he's hilarious. But as far as them trying to put that on their brand, which has become equivalent for being woke and sensitive about everything, it's a complete disconnect. It's trying to live in both worlds at the same time.
They need to do sports. They need to do sports. They're a sports programming network. That's what they are. And they think they're funny and they're not. Now, Hinchcliffe may be funny, but that's inappropriate. Sorry, but it is in that context.
Mark, let's talk about the Penguins. Speaking of inappropriate, how can we
have to?
Speaking about them appropriately is going to be difficult, but I agreed with what you said on the podcast. By the way, the Mad Monday podcast is up today. You can check it out on the Fans First Network and at Trib Live Breakfast with Benz. What you said about Erik Karlsson is right. I mean, it's almost like his gaffes are getting worse.
Well, the problem is he doesn't care. He's just out there to play Erik Karlsson hockey, and if it doesn't work, that's too bad. They don't dare bench him because of the cap hit. It's just a bad scene there with him and with a lot of guys. I mean, when Lars Eller is your big scoring threat, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and that's certainly been the case for them so far. I think I didn't get to see the game because I was doing pregame. I didn't see how Nedeljkovic looked. I don't know how much of the goals were on him, but
he wasn't great. But I don't blame him per se. He was left out to dry. I mean, even Marcus Pettersson was making grievous defensive errors. They run this system where all the defensemen activate, all of them. One size fits all. And half of them can't do nothing when they do activate because they're not offensively skilled at all. And then they get caught up ice. It is the most flawed system for this team. It was one thing when your sixth defenseman was Trevor Daley. But now it's Jack St. Ivany or Ryan Shea. Sullivan is a great coach. He's a terrible coach for this group because he wants to coach this group like the old group.
Yeah, and they are going into the Western Canada swing starting yesterday in Manitoba against Winnipeg, and now they got Calgary coming up. Has Calgary lost yet? They were unbeaten going into the weekend, weren't they?
Yeah, they were 5-0 last I heard. Tim, their season could be over by the end of the Western Canada trip, and I'm not kidding. They come home 3-7, they're screwed.
Well, you made the point, wasn't it before the Carolina game on Friday night, that was a bigger game than people were giving it credit for? Because if you got that win, at least it buffered what could be the potential of playing poorly in Western Canada and only coming back with one victory.
Right. If you beat Carolina, then you go 1-3 in Western Canada, you come home 5-5. And that's okay. Not great, but okay.
Yeah, Jari's play so far, I mean, what was he, a healthy scratch yesterday? I know it always focuses on the goaltender, and there's so much more than the goaltender, but they do have to figure that out, and Bloomquist just might be the best option right now.
I'm not saying that well, no, as far as the goaltending goes, Bloomquist probably is their best option, but you don't want to retard his development by having him here and assuming too big a workload before he's ready. It's more important to develop Bloomquist and Morishov, the other young goalie, the Russian, to develop them properly to make sure you have what's perceived to be the best goaltending up here, because I don't think this team's going anywhere this year.
Quickly, Mark, before we get some comments here, I saw Pitt moved up to number 19. I think they're one of 10 unbeaten teams left in the country. They get Syracuse on Thursday. Having watched Syracuse since I went there a little bit, I feel like Pitt's a slightly better version of a very similar team to what Syracuse is. I think they win again on Thursday. How far can they run this out, do you think? And how far can they extend this?
Well, I'm impressed that they moved up in the ratings without playing. If they took a couple more weeks off, Tim, they'd be in the playoff. I don't know. I mean, my stance on Pitt, since they got to like 3-0, is I still believe they can beat most opponents. Well, actually, every opponent on their schedule is beatable because they're in the ACC. But I also think they can lose to anybody. And I want to see how Holstein bounces back from his first bad game, too.
That's fair. I do think the points that you can exploit Syracuse at, they can do, and they can do well. So I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be mid-30s to mid-30s. I think it's going to be close. You know, Syracuse is the transfer quarterback, couple good weapons, good back. So I think it's going to be a very similar game. I'd love to see a scenario where they're both in it, they and Penn State, but, you know, I think that's wishful thinking at this point, and who knows what Penn State does.
Well, now hold it. First round of the playoffs, they have home games, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be looking for marquee matchups that fill stadiums and get people to watch TV. If Penn State's the 5th seed, Pitt could be the 12th seed. They could play in the first round. There's going to be brand names get in and matchups that get favored. They're not looking for the best 12 teams, Tim. They're looking for the best tournament. Like Army's going to make it, even though Army's going to stink.
Now I don't know.
They're going to be probably undefeated.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's numerical all the way down through 16 through 12 rather through the last seed. If they do it strictly by numbers, or if they, you know.
Yeah, Tim, I've heard that strictly by numbers crap before.
Yeah,
right. We'll see what happens, but my point is, if Pitt loses like only one game, I wouldn't count them out of getting in and getting a matchup like that.
Real quick, Mark, I forgot to bring this up kind of from the Steelers' perspective to get back into some comments about the Steelers, but how much credit does Tomlin deserve for making the call that he did under some of the scrutiny he was getting for doing so?
A lot. He deserves a lot of credit because he hasn't made many good decisions in years. And this was a tough one, and he got it right. I like that he told Jay Glazer, I'm trying to win a world title here. Like he's wrestling Terry Funk at the Superdome next week. But it's the right decision. And a lot of people didn't like it. Apparently, he told Glazer a lot of people internally didn't like it. So I give him all the credit in the world. It's a good decision. I thought it was the right decision even before he made it to go to Russ. Because, Tim, it's simple. You hired him to be QB1, not to battle with Fields, not to share snaps, not to push a blocking sled. By the way, Tim, when Russ scored the touchdown, you know what I thought? Take that, blocking sled.
They should have had one in the end zone for him to hit for a celebration. Or one of the sidelines. Push it up the sideline or something like that. No, I agree about the Tomlin point. I think it might be a little bit of an exaggerated version of the truth to say Lone Ranger. You know, that's a convenient storyline. Glazer's super tight with Tomlin. He's going to advance that. I think the Lone Ranger, not true. I'm sure there were people that were on board with Mike's decision to go to Russ, but I do also think there were people in that building that wanted to see him stay with Justin Fields just because they were 4-2. I don't think any of the receivers were those people. I think the receivers are thrilled. I certainly think the tight ends are thrilled after yesterday. Now they're sitting here at 5-2. This is the game they lost last year to really get things going for Matt Canada against Jacksonville in Week 7. They win this game to get to 5-2. They win the next game to get to 6-2, I think, against the Giants, who are even worse than the Jets in New York. And then they might really be at 6 or 7-3, 6-3, 7-2, something like that, going into all the divisional games, which is exactly where they needed to be. That was a best case scenario, and they might actually hit it by the time they get to Washington.
Yeah, and Cleveland obviously is in a lot of trouble, although I think they'll benefit if Watson is out, for the long haul, like they benefited last year. And Cincinnati's not the fearsome opponent we thought, although they may yet be. Baltimore's a problem.
Jeremy says it's amazing what a quarterback who can actually throw can do. It's not even just about the throwing of the quarterback himself. It's what the coaches allow him to do at the line of scrimmage, and it's what the coaches send in as play calls, too, because they trust the quarterback to throw.
Well, like we said on the podcast last night, Tim, I thought one of Russ's best throws was when he led Sauce Gardner interfering with Pickens. He saw Gardner at his back turn, put the ball up there and trusted Pickens to do the right thing. That's the trust level. The trust level is there now between Russ and everybody and with everybody and Russ.
Yes, because it's not like he threw the ball, those deep balls, into perfect positions where Pickens could run underneath them. He had to come back, actually, and make a couple of comeback catches. Pickens really earned those catches, but the fact that they're allowing Russ to do that as often as they are indicates that they trust the quarterback to make the throw and put the receiver in a position where he can at least battle for it. And I don't think they were there with Fields.
Either that, Tim, either that or maybe – Russ is actually doing what Fields was scared to do, which is going through all his progressions.
Yeah, that's right. It could be on the quarterback, too. We talked about that with Pickett a bunch. By the way, Mason Rudolph did play yesterday. He started and lost for the Titans. Did have an interception dropped, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They got out to a 10-0 lead. Then Buffalo stormed back, blew their doors off. Kenny Pickett got in for a little bit for Philly, got sacked once, and threw 1 incompletion over 3 series, and that was it. Eric says,
a punk.
Evidently, $160 million can't buy basic tackling skills. It was a clown show on some of those Jets drives watching members of the
you're going to complain about that today. You're going to complain about that today. Okay? They finally got a quarterback. They scored 31 unanswered points. You're going to complain about that today. You're going to call the defense a clown show when you won handily against Aaron Rodgers. Okay, whatever. You just won't be happy ever.
He had, speaking of not happy, when that trade was made, did you ever imagine Karlsson would be this awful?
Yes.
You thought it could be this bad?
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what I think?
I thought it had the potential to be worse than good. I didn't think it would be this bad because I don't know if they're reaping enough. They certainly didn't reap enough offensive return for the mistakes that were made last year, especially on the power play.
Well, one thing that happened with Karlsson in San Jose, Tim, is he got used to not caring about winning. And I think that carries over to Pittsburgh with him.
Pete, sort of echoing our comments about Pickens, George should have been credited with 3 receptions for that 1 catch. Yeah, that was a difficult catch. It was a typical Pickens kind of catch. I was also impressed with the catch that Freiermuth made. That's not an easy catch for a tight end. And, hey, they decided to use Darnell Washington as an actual target. So between the two tight ends, it was something like 6 catches for 80-something yards. That's a pretty good day for tight end production.
And Van Halen had a touchdown.
Yeah, they found the other receivers a little bit too. Even Austin had himself a 36-yard catch. So even finding him is something. Matthew says,
and that might sound like nothing, Tim, but guys like Van Halen and Kenny the Kangaroo, they don't have to do a lot, but they can't do nothing.
Yeah, you got to keep them engaged to keep them doing the little things as well as they want to do. Matthew says, let's change it up a bit, Mark. Thoughts on the Riverhounds and how far they can go in the playoffs? You following them at all? Or you locked in on Liverpool for the most part?
Yeah, no, they've only lost like once in 20 games. They've had a bunch of draws, but they've made up a lot of ground. And right now they're in a playoff spot. I'm not sure they've clinched yet. There's one more game to go, but they play the last place team in the other conference, and it's at Pittsburgh, so that bodes well. As far as what kind of run they'll have, I don't know. They're not offensively gifted. And in single elimination, at some point, you got to score.
Wanted to get to this one from Calvin, who says, can't believe Wilson was getting booed by the fans less than a quarter in. Glad he shut them up with real QB1 level play.
Tim, there were a lot of Steeler fans who wanted Wilson to fail so they could be right about Fields, even if it meant the Steelers losing. It's a crappy sports town. It is. Pittsburgh's a crappy sports town. And people are going to say, well, why don't you leave if you don't like it? No, why don't you change because I don't like it, and I'm smarter than you, and I'm a better fan than you. Michael Keaton, like I said, did that great hype video, and then they're booing the quarterback in the first quarter. So much for unity.
One thing that I noticed about Wilson being out there, and I think I saw one, let me see here, at least one reference to his play action. You can sort of see that the defense was guessing at times, whether it was play action or just I got the vibe that they got real comfortable playing against Justin Fields real quickly, and Fields, whatever he was going to get, was by hook or by crook, just doing it with his legs and scrambling, like improving, whereas I felt like the defense was reacting to what Wilson was doing.
Yeah, I think it's real easy to draw a bead and get a rhythm defending Justin Fields, even though you would think the opposite because, you know, what he can do with his legs. But what he can do with his legs is really all he can do.
Richard says this Western trip for the Pens has the potential to snowball into a major losing streak and sink the season before it really gets started. That's a point that Mark brought up earlier. He adds, from a football perspective, all the diehard Fields supporters got real quiet after that game. So if it does really dent the Penguins early, Mark, what does Kyle Dubas do about it? Because we know Sullivan is just going to stay the course because that's what Sully does, and he feels comfortable.
He already knows what he's going to do, Tim. Dubas already knows. I mean, he hasn't told me, but I'll give you the one thing that's a dead giveaway. Marcus Pettersson, pretty good defensive defenseman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Due for a new contract. He ain't getting it. They're trading him at the deadline. They're not even negotiating with him because what's the point when your intent is to trade him at the deadline because you know the team's going nowhere? Not really. They might make the playoffs still. I doubt it now, though. They're clueless. They don't understand what they are. And I've said that for years, but now that's been badly exacerbated. Case in point, after the Carolina game, Lars Eller, who has somehow emerged as a spokesman for the team, which is weird.
Last year.
Well, he tells the truth, but he's barely been here and accomplished nothing here. Did win somewhere else. But they keep talking about effort. Like Eller said, the effort wasn't there. A few other players said that off the record. Sullivan said it. Tim, they're giving effort. They're just slow. They're slow as crap. But they talk about effort because you can fix effort and you can't fix slow.
Last one. This came from somebody. It's a good point, actually, and we raised this in the podcast briefly. If Russ stays healthy, does Fields take another snap this season? I think he does. I think they figure out a way to use him in some packages or, you know, just to keep the other team off balance, somewhere in the red zone perhaps, even though that's where Russ did his best work last year in Denver. I was actually surprised they didn't sprinkle him in somewhere, Mark, in this game.
I was a little surprised he didn't get like a carry at the goal line. I might have used him to score that touchdown inside of 30 left instead of Najee, but maybe that would have looked too much like throwing him a bone. Then again, maybe it's best to occasionally throw him a bone.
Mark, Liverpool, top of the league, I understand. Is that right?
Liverpool, top of the league. Liverpool, top of the league. Yep, 2-1 over Chelsea. What is it? 7-1 or 8-1 in the league? I forget, but pretty good.
All right, so Mark is on today, 3 until 6. You can check him out there on
105. 2 until 6.
I'm sorry, 2 until 6. Pre-game show with Shirtless Tom, Tommy Radio, 2 until 6. And then you can also check me out today. I'll be at Jason Aldean's the North Shore for Monday Night Quarterback with Tom Bradley and with Jerry Dulac. So we're going to be on from 6 until 8. And, of course, the Mad Money podcast is up courtesy of Bella Construction, as it always is, each and every Monday at Breakfast with Benz. This is Madden Benz Unfiltered after Steelers win over the Jets.